We receive what Jesus did for everybody when we have faith. So what Jesus did for everybody becomes mine personally when I believe in it. And that's the same idea with objective. Okay, this is outside of me. But then when I believe in Jesus Christ, that becomes a part of me, doesn't it? Okay? Now, the reason it's by faith, to be saved by grace is the opposite of being saved by works. And to be saved by faith and to be saved by grace is exactly the same thing. Because we are saved by believing a promise. Now, there's nothing you can do with a promise other than believe it or not believe it. And that's why I think I was joking with Fred a couple of weeks ago. If I told Fred and Jean, Sunday I'd like to come over about 3 o'clock. We'll talk about some things. And you know how much I like coffee and maybe some good old coffee cake or something. And I'll be there about 3 o'clock, okay? I can get away with that. So anyway, Sunday comes, I knock on the door, and you're about ready to go out for a walk or something. So, well, I told you I'd be here at 3 o'clock. Well, we didn't think you were really coming. In other words, they didn't what? They didn't believe me. Or if I show up and you open up the door, boy, I can smell that coffee and Jean's got some coffee cake there or something. You always say, you what? You believe me. That's the only thing you can do with a promise. You either believe it or you don't. There's nothing else you can do. And what the Bible says, if you don't believe it, you don't have it. But if you believe what God promises you, it's yours. Because faith is the hand that receives what God gives to you. Okay? Or like I was doing with Michael here, if I'm God saying in Jesus Christ everything's okay, that's the promise of the gospel, then for you to take my hand is faith saying, boy, that's wonderful. I believe that. And now you are reconciled with God through faith in Jesus Christ. Okay? Okay, let's do number 8. Oh, I'm sorry, let me do one more illustration I just remembered, and then we'll do number 8. And I've done this before, but it bears repeating. Another illustration I could give you, and you've heard it before. Remember the check I have for you? Let's say it's $10,000. That's more believable than $1 million. I have a check for you for $10,000. Has your name on it, my name on it. Pretend with me that there's money in the bank and it's legitimate. Okay? This is the objective nature of the gospel. Before you've even accepted it, it's a reality, isn't it? Okay? And now I offer it to you. And that's what it means when Jesus says, preach and teach the gospel to all the world. We're offering what Jesus objectively did for everybody. Wherever we preach and teach, we offer that to people, right? It's a promise from God. But it doesn't do you any good, again, I'll pick on Michael again, it doesn't do you any good, this check, until you accept it, right? And you can cash it and say, wow, that's great. But if you don't receive it, even though it's real, I say, come on, Michael. No, you're trying to embarrass me in front of all these people. Please, Michael, I'm not, really. No, I don't know what you're doing, Pastor, but you're trying to make a fool of me or something. I'm not going to do it. Well, despite how much I may plead with him, and despite how much there really is $10,000 in the bank and the check's legitimate, it doesn't do him any good, does it? Only as he receives it. And that's what faith is. So faith is taking what God promises to everybody, say, wow, that's for me. That's for me. On that passage, let me give you another one, then we'll move on to number 8. Write down Galatians 2, 20 and 21, and you'll see the point real easily. Then we'll move on to number 8. I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Now watch. The life I live in the body. I live by faith. There's faith, right? In the Son of God who what? Who loved me and gave himself for me. Now, there's nowhere in the Bible that explicitly says Jesus died for the Apostle Paul. But it does say Jesus died for who? Everybody. See? And Paul is speaking of faith. Paul is saying Jesus died for everybody. That means he died for me. And that's where faith comes in. What Jesus did for everybody, I believe it. And it's for me. And then notice again what he says, 21. I do not set aside what? The grace of God. For if righteousness could be gained by keeping the law, Christ died for nothing.